2335 Changing Shadow. After that, the conversation fizzled out. Sunny focused on weaving, while Kai tactfully gave him some space. This is a bit tricky. Sunny had done quite a bit of weaving in his life, but he could not remember ever having to enchant something on such a strict deadline. One day was really not enough to create something worthy, but he put great effort into arming Kai as best he could. He also decided to design a set of enchantments for the bow that could be implemented in stages. That was a new approach for him and required a different way of creating a weave. But if Sunny succeeded here, he could potentially save himself a lot of trouble in the future. After all, up until now, he always had to complete the entire weave in one go, otherwise, the unfinished pattern of shadow strings would quickly collapse as soon as Sunny released his hold on it. If he could come up with a way to prevent that from happening, he would have far fewer headaches while tackling truly complicated enchantments. Necessity was truly the mother of invention. Still, Sunny felt hurried and tense while working on the bow. I miss my shadows. Having one paltry body to work with felt stifling. It was really quite frustrating. How did people even manage to live their entire lives in such an inconvenient way? Poor mortals. They must be struggling every day. Unthinkable. Sunny scoffed, remembering his own struggles vaguely. He had grown accustomed to controlling several bodies at the same time a while ago, so the very idea of only possessing one seemed strange now. Not to mention the idea of only perceiving the world through one vessel. Sunny had been experiencing the world through many points of view for the past year. Suddenly finding himself all alone in his own head felt both comforting and disconcerting. It was through this feeling of strangeness that he realized how far from being a human he had strayed without ever fully realizing it. Sunny knew that he was a shadow now, not a human being, but that was merely a difference of form. Here in Ariel's game, however, he had no choice but to admit that his very mind was growing further and further apart from that of a human. It had nothing to do with becoming numb to human emotions, like what Neffys had experienced due to the agony of her flaw, and more with the nature of his consciousness itself. But then again, maybe it was not that different after all, on the fundamental level. Was it merely a matter of repetition? Sunny remembered how vivid and horrifying his first encounter with an abomination had been. But after facing and slaying a myriad of them, he barely felt anything when encountering yet another ghastly horror. He had grown callous to their presence. The same held true for human experiences. People naturally changed as they grew older and accumulated calluses on their hearts. The emotions of a wizened old man were deeply different from the feelings of a child, for whom every occasion was new and exciting. At the same time, there was a natural limit to a human's lifespan, as well as to the number of events they could experience at any given time. But what if that limit was removed? What if a human could live for 1,000 years while experiencing 1,000 different perspectives? How different would the mind of such a being become, and would it still be even remotely human? Sunny sighed. I'm changing. He was still young, and he had already changed so much. What kind of person would he become in a decade? The fact that his consciousness was slowly transforming to resemble that of a deity was both a promising sign and an eerie omen. It was good to know that he was well on his way to apotheosis, but still. Sunny had already seen supreme humans who had lost most, if not all, of their humanity. The example of Anvil and Kisong was right in front of his eyes, and they were both hateful. He hoped that he would never become callous and indifferent to human suffering like they had. That he would not change that much. Ah, I miss my true name, as well. A true name was meant to serve as an anchor of one's self. Without it, the promise of unending change seemed frightening. That said, even in the throes of unease, Sunny knew that some things about him would never change. For example, his love for Neffys. The two of them had been separated numerous times, by the conflicting nature of their values and beliefs, by the boundaries separating different worlds, by the fatal depths of political strife, and even by fate itself. And yet, despite it all, they still always ended up together. Nothing had been able to pull them apart yet, and he knew that nothing would ever be able to pull them apart in the future, either. That was one constant in his tumultuous life. Funny, Sunny thought of himself as an anchor that kept Neffys tethered to humanity. Maybe she was his anchor, as well. Taking a deep sigh, he forced his 6 hands to move even faster. In the end, he succeeded in placing the first enchantment on Kai's bow, as well as crafting 2 powerful arrows from the crystal shards. He even managed to enchant the charming archer's quiver. It was a good start. And there was still some time left before sunset. Turning his head, Sunny glanced at the altar standing at the heart of the Ash Castle. And at the jade figure of a snow beast laying on it. His eyes narrowed. Shall I? Letting Kai experiment with his improved bow and new arrows, Sunny rose from the ash and walked over to the altar. Slayer followed behind, her steps soft and quiet. Picking up the figure of the snow beast, Sunny hesitated for a while. I wonder what truth I will learn this time. How about learning why the world had ended? Taking a deep breath, he focused on what he wanted to learn and tossed the jade beast into the billowing smoke. 2336 A strange truth. The sun was rising above the wine, dark sea. Its gentle rays caressed an island where white stones were drowning in the verdant grass, and colorful flowers blossomed in the pleasant heat. A forest covered the slopes of the island like a carpet, and at its highest point, a woman was resting in the shade of an olive tree. She wore a knee-length chiton, its pristine fabric as white as snow, with a deer's skin tied around her shoulders. Her hair was cut short, held back by a simple leather band. Her gaze was calm and sober. As the woman rested, a doe emerged from the forest. Instead of being scared of the human, it approached her tentatively and lowered itself to the ground, resting its head on her lap. The woman lowered her hand to caress the wild doe gently, her fingers drowning in the soft fur. Then, she suddenly turned her head and glanced at the sea, its surface rising and falling tumultuously. Far away, a sail appeared from beyond the horizon. A ship was approaching the island, struggling against the waves. The wind had brought a storm, and with it came the guests. 3 people disembarked from the ship, an old man, a warrior carrying a round shield, and a child with red hair. They made their way along the winding path and approached an old shrine. The shrine was neither grand nor magnificent, but it emanated a feeling of solemn holiness. Its walls were built of white marble, with rose vines covering them like a cloak. An altar stood in front of the shrine, with fire burning in a stone bowl. The old man made an offering to the altar, placing fresh grapes, leaves of laurel, and hawk feathers on its weathered surface. Finally, he burned incense in the bowl and stepped back, kneeling reverently on the ground. The warrior stood behind him, leaning on his spear. The child, meanwhile, furtively reached his little hand to snatch the grapes. Shocked, the old man slapped the boy's hand away. Oro. The boy flinched away and stumbled, his lips trembling. Let him have it. The woman's voice resounded from the other side of the altar. She appeared without making any noise, as if by magic. The forest seemed more alive in her presence, and roses suddenly bloomed on the vines behind her. The boy froze, looking at her with wide eyes. The old man lowered himself to the ground, while the warrior bowed deeply. Why are you here? The old man straightened and glanced at the woman with awe. My lady, I bring news of woe. She regarded him silently, making the old man continue. A supreme beast is rampaging on the northern borders of our kingdom. The mountain gate is no more, and several cities have already been ravaged. We've come to beseech you, as a hero, to defend our lands once more. The woman's gorgeous face remained expressionless. Is there no warrior left in the kingdom to defeat a rampaging beast? The warrior glanced away in shame. The old man, meanwhile, smiled wistfully. There are those who can kill the beast, my lady. However, only you can stop its rampage without spilling blood. The woman remained silent for a while, then turned away without saying a word and disappeared into the shrine. A few minutes later, she returned carrying a bow and a quiver of arrows, a leather bracer fastened on her forearm. The old man shifted and glanced at her with glee. Our ship. But she simply shook her head. No need. She picked up a hawk's feather from the altar, glanced at it silently, and then threw it into the fire. A moment later, 2 wings like those of a hawk unfolded from her back, sunlight pouring through the brown feathers. The woman fastened the quiver to her belt and stretched her wings, preparing to take flight. Before that, however, she lingered for a few seconds. Taking the grapes from the altar, she offered them to the boy, and then awkwardly patted him on the head. Don't let your elders kneel in your stead, boy. A second later, her graceful figure soared into the air. The boy was left on the ground, looking at the sky with wonder in his eyes. A mountain chain lay in ruins. Beyond the broken cliffs and fractured land, pillars of smoke were rising into the sky from a devastated city. And on the plain in front of it, a huge boar lay on the ground, dead, a flood of crimson blood flowing from its wounds like a river. Its carcass was like a towering hill, and the woman who stood below it glanced like an ant in its shadow. Her quiver was empty, and her face was concerned. She inhaled deeply, then grimaced, as if appalled by something. Poison. The woman crouched faintly and leapt high into the air, landing on the dead beast's snout. She ascended its corpse like one would a mountain, eventually reaching the huge boar's vast back. There, hidden by the coarse fur, hundreds of great javelins bristled like a palisade, their metal corroded and covered in rust. The woman grasped one of the javelins and pulled it out of the dead beast's flesh, then studied it with a frown. A few seconds later, she frowned. Imperial steel. Her expression darkened. Turning north, she glanced at the crumbled mountains. Where a narrow mountain pass had been, now there was a wide valley. An impregnable gorge had turned into an open road. A shadow fell on the woman's clear eyes. And with that, Sunny found himself back in the Ash Castle. He gasped, then swayed faintly, disoriented for a moment. What the? Which of his questions was this truth supposed to answer? He wanted to know how the world had ended, not how a strange woman had slain a rampaging supreme beast. And more than that, Oro of the Damned Nine. Now that was a blast from the past. As Sunny spat the name of the young Imperial soldier he had killed once, in his first nightmare, Slayer shifted faintly behind him. Turning around, he glanced at her veiled face, then studied her graceful figure. That was a scene from your past, wasn't it? Slayer tilted her head, looking at him expressionlessly. Sunny stared at his shadow for a few seconds, then glanced away. Right, she doesn't know what truth was revealed to me, and on top of that, she doesn't even remember her own past. And even if the truth Ariel's game had shown him was about Slayer, technically, it was not her past. Because Slayer was not the woman from the vision he had been shown, but a shadow creature born from the woman's shadow instead, long after the woman died. Still, there must have been a reason why Ariel's vision had given him this truth, and not any other. The scene must have been important, somehow. As important as two demons meeting in the middle of the Doom War. If it was, however, Sunny had no idea why. He took a few deep breaths, trying to suppress his frustration, then slowly regained his composure. No, it's fine. There were 12 more snow abominations for him to slay, and 12 more truths for him to uncover. One of those should hold the answer he sought.